Hey, Grand Ascension. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Nisi Denise, back to do another reading. I want to pick up where we left off in Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. We were on chapter 4, and it was the Tartarian architecture, cathedrals, churches, and star forts. And if you recall from my last video, we talked about we've talked about a lot of stuff. Let me recap. So I guess the one thing that I want to point out, and this was from chapter 3 actually, is that Rockefeller and several other elites decided to get together, and in our educational system, they removed one of the, I guess you would say, one of the 5 elements, right? So, there's earth, which would be considered land. There's earth, water, fire, air, and then the 5th element would be ether. Well, they removed ether, okay? And that was the start of them erasing or hiding the fact that there's energy throughout the ether. I mean, our bodies are powered, for lack of a better word, we are the original wireless technology. We're organic in nature, true enough, but our bodies have electricity, and we know that you can measure the electricity in the human body, right? So I just want to call that out. And then also another thing we learned previous chapters, we talked about how the Tartarians dressed. They wore hats all the time. They dressed up. They were about self-improvement, positivity. Their structures were built on, obviously, ley lines, and they had the larger windows, stained glass windows that used cymatics, and also their architecture was more or less sacred geometry. They did not have restrooms in their buildings because they didn't eat. Now, I know another gentleman that I follow on social media, he had a post earlier today or yesterday where he posted about Tartarians and their diet. He is telling folks that, Tartarians ate meat. Okay. And I'm just going to simply say, you have to do your research, but I'm going to point you in to do your research, because you have to understand that anyone who consumes flesh will not become Christed. They will not ascend. Okay. You are consuming another living entity or living organic thing. And how can you even put your mind to state that if I consume this flesh, I'm godly? I'm just going to tell you. I know that's not a popular thing, but a lot of you so-called self-professed religious folks will go into these churches and buildings and do fish fries and foot washings and prayer dances, and preachers this cookout and this Bible study and this Women's Day. Y'all consume all these steak dinners, but you really think in the end, when you consume steak dinners, you're consuming flesh, so you think it's okay. You think it's okay to eat meat, whether it's tortured or put down in a humane way. You still think it's right. And if you go back and you look, even in text, in biblical text, there were some disciples that did not eat. Okay. Yes, you had some people that did eat, but you had some that did not, and they practiced Pythagoreanism. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. So that's a couple of things I wanted to point out for you guys. Ultimately, like I said, John D. Rockefeller was the one who made free energy illegal by lobbying the U.S. Congress and then ultimately the rest of the Western world. So, and I do remember sharing something over on Facebook where I talked about Turkmenistan in this book, where they had free energy up until 2012. Turkmenistan, most of the people live underground. Beautiful country. I shared a video over on Facebook this morning about a gentleman who went over there and took a tour. It's damn near impossible to get in that country. And then you have to have a guide to chaperone everywhere around with you. And it's pretty much no one's there. I mean, no one's out and about like it is, say, for example, in New York City. You have a lot of people out. Over there, no, not so much. We also know that the Tartarians utilized the bells and the organ pipes instead of resonance at 432 hertz, which is a natural frequency. 432 and 528 is a natural frequency. When Rockefeller came in and the parasites took over these buildings, they removed the bells and the organs. They retuned to 440 hertz, which is more of a frequency that's, that'll be more of a point to where it will bring you down, right? 432 as opposed to 440. Even the music nowadays is played in 440. You need to go research it and look it up. All right. So let me get back to where I left off at. So right here he says, these new bells and organ pipes, instead of creating euphoria, suddenly made those inside feel despair due to their much lower vibration. Okay. And as we're talking about the organs. Okay. And it says, however, just like cathedrals, I have no doubt that the parasites ensure that the churches they attend or those used as their very own private chapels still have the original bells and pipes in place. Along the way, the crystals were removed from the windows and replaced with colored glass. Okay. You will see many churches have relatively new stained glass windows with little or no explanation as to why they changed. So they did have crystal and glass. Now, Chief Red Wolf had made a point to state that when you use the stained glass in the windows, it has a certain reflection, or it's more or less like it can keep something from looking in and you looking out, not being able to see certain things that are present. Okay. Because we know that there are things around us 24/7, things that we cannot see. There is such thing as plasma being. There are disembodied souls, okay, that roam this dome. Whether you believe it or not, they exist, okay? So they removed the crystals from the glass. They put in stained glass, and some of them had stained glass with crystals. So you got to ask yourself why that is, okay? So it says, along the way, the crystals were removed from the windows and replaced with colored glass. You will see that many churches have relatively new stained glass windows with little or no explanation as to why they were changed. In addition to this, most Tartarian buildings once set beneath shiny copper domes, but most now have turned green. This isn't from natural aging as a result of the elements, but actually due to them being coated in horse urine to stop them from working. That's right, horse urine. I'm telling you, these parasites got some things up their sleeve. I ain't gonna lie. American inventor Royal Raymond Rife worked extensively on healing people using frequencies, and his technology is still used today over 120 years later. The machine produced very low energy waves, also known as the radio frequency electromagnetic fields, because we are electromagnetic beings. These temples that we reside in resonate at a certain frequency. Okay. You guys should know that by now if you've been listening to me read and you do your own research, right? Rife based his ideas on the work of another scientist, Albert Abrams, who believed diseases gave off electromagnetic frequencies. Rife thought bacteria was behind many diseases like cancer and created a microscope to see them. Okay. And also cancer is also caused by parasites too. Okay. Just going to say, he claimed that his Rife frequency generator could detect and get rid of cancer by tuning it into electromagnetic pulses. The American Medical Association condemned Rife's experiments. And you want to know why? It's because there's no money in curing someone. The money for these big corporations and these elite families who oversee these big corporations and appoint people in positions of power all around this earth dome, no matter what country you're in, they want to generate and make money off of us. And the way they do that is to keep us enslaved, dumbed down, teach us that we need to go to get an education from their institutions. Don't think outside the box. Learn what you need to be, learn what you need to do, and then become this worker bee, right? They don't teach you how to run or be productive enough to where you open your own business, right? They want you to stay stuck in the system, right? And I mean, really and truly, the way things were previously, we didn't have to do that. We could travel freely. There was an abundance of life prior to this last reset. There were less people. Yes, true enough. But it was a one world government and everyone was on the same accord until they weren't. Okay. So it says, with this in mind, it's also worth considering why a church organ is called an organ. Is it yet another coincidence, or is it actually because the original frequency that these emitted were designed to heal human organs? Okay. It seems pretty clear to me that parasites like Rockefeller have tried their hardest to make our lives as difficult as possible and profited along the way and keep people ignorant to the fact of the things that are out there that can help you heal. Right? Today, they not only make the products that cause us damage in the first place, but benefit from the sale of the products that are supposed to cure us. Right? Like I said, there's no money in the cure. There's money in the treatment and to keep us sick. I'm just going to tell you. Therefore, they are not only the gamekeeper, but the poacher too. As for whether or not people were originally buried in the church grounds, I'm not sure, but I am yet to find any gravestones that predates the last reset. It is also unknown if any form of religious ceremonies ever took place inside a church either. Because remember what I read to you previously, it talked about they would come into these cathedrals and these buildings, and this place would give off a feeling of euphoria. It was there to heal you. It was there for you to meditate and to seek within and to go within. These places were centers of healing. Okay. So, I mean, like he says in this book, he says it is unknown if any form of religious ceremonies ever took place inside a church. I do believe, though, that the crucifixes we see on top of the spires today were added and are not original, along with many of the statues inside. Some have weather vanes, as do a great deal of older buildings, which makes me wonder what the obsession is with the direction the wind is blowing, unless, of course, they were monitoring the weather so it could be harnessed effectively. When you next visit or pass a church, you will often see what appears to be a pine cone here and there and inside. They take pride of that place. Again, this is further evidence that there were places of healing, as the pine cone represents the pineal gland, and it's on the top of the staff of the so-called Pope, the figurehead in the Vatican. Okay, just gonna say it, and that's the Pope that's in white. I guess he's dressed in white because they have a black Pope and they have a gray Pope. Okay, just gonna be honest with you. Exactly how the frequencies resonate is due to cymatics and is very carefully designed and implemented during construction. An amazing feat for the lowly stonemason, as it requires very in-depth mathematical knowledge and understanding. When you consider that they were built at a time when the world's population was a fraction of what it is today, how can we really be expected to believe that every village had such skilled craftsmen as it's at its disposal? And we talked about how tall the Tartarians were. The average height of them was 10 feet. Okay. And up until recently, like at the turn of the century, like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Smithsonian would come in. There's articles all around, if you know where to go look on online, about giant mounds that are discovered here in the U.S. They would come in, they would scoop up the body parts and the remains, and they would disappear and never come. You would never find them. But there were articles like in the New York Post and all the major newspapers here in the U.S. at the turn of the century, where it talked about giant bones being found in burial mounds, and some up to 18 feet in length, in height. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. So it's a thing. It's really true. I mean, they existed, and they still exist to this day, but not on the scale that they were previously. Right. So it says. Sadly, many of the most incredible cathedrals and churches were destroyed during World War II. And prior to this, we lost a great deal through fire, which almost every major city in the world suffered during the 1800s. Now, remember we talked about the timeline. They added 1,000 years. And then roughly what he's saying in the book, he said in the 1800s, I'm saying it was in the 1700s based on what I read. So from the 17 to 1800s, you have 100 years difference. So it is true. A lot of the major cities around the world burned. Okay. I will go into more detail about this and provide places and dates in chapter 6. There are also towns and cities across the world that at one point in time would have been bustling with life, appeared to have been desolate for many years, following the reset of 1776. And that's why they always give you that 1776 crap here in the United States. It's because of the Reconstruction. And this country was already founded because Tartary existed. Tartary existed all around the world. It wasn't just one location. You all understand that. And so with the bamboozle here in the Americas, this is where you get the Reconstruction period all around the world. Okay. And it says, I have included pictures of these in the sender pages, but recommend taking a look for yourselves online. This strengthens the theory that after the many wars that occurred and with the Tartarian Empire wiped from the pages of history, there were a lot of magnificent buildings that could now be claimed and repurposed. And that's exactly what they did. Churches, hospitals, well, some of them are hospitals, churches, universities, courthouses, government buildings. The government stepped in and took over these buildings and repurposed them. We know that, right? One of the more peculiar remnants of the Tartarian Empire has to be the Star Fort. Okay. Sadly, this may well be the first time you've ever heard mentioned, but once you see, you will be in awe of their beauty and incredible engineering that took place to create them. Again, they can be found all over the world, not just here in the Americas, okay? But from the ground can be quite hard to detect. It might be worth at this stage taking a quick look at some of the images of star forts in the center pages of this book before reading this part any further. So let me see. I'm going to go in. I'm just going to show you a couple of pages. All right, so I'm going to hold this up. There's Portugal, the Netherlands, here in America, in Baltimore, and in Essex, England. Okay, so I'm going to show you these pictures and just take a screenshot. Check this out, you guys. Look. Can you see that? And this is from the air now. I'm just holding it up so you can see. See? Beautiful. And this is at a time where we were using sticks and stones. Come on now. Come on now. And this is here in the Americas right here. This is the Star Fort McHenry, Baltimore, America. This top one here. So that's up north right here. No way. I'm telling you, the history's been rewritten. He's bringing it home with that. So it says, once you see them, you may well agree that these and many other world's great castles were actually early hospitals where patients went to be healed using frequency and cymatics. There remains approximately 319 star forts still in existence, and they can be found in Europe, South America, the Middle East, Far East, and Russia. Here are a few examples. So I showed you Fort Henry, Baltimore. There's a Fort Pike in New Orleans. You guys Google that. Fort Stenwax, Rome, and New York. Elvas in Portugal, Elvas. Palanova in Italy. Tilbury Star Fort, Tilbury, England. Fort Briscoe, France, and Citadel Hill, Halifax, Canada. These uniquely designed symmetric fortresses are almost always located near a source of water and are actually independent ecosystems that, just like cathedrals and churches, create a sense of well-being and euphoria for those that live within the walls. They were constructed using sacred geometry and align with the constellation and harness energy from the ether to generate the frequency of 528 hertz, which resonates between its walls. They also use the ethereal vibration of water. Okay, come on now, this is advanced technology we're talking about. You see, you're not going to learn this stuff in school. You're just not. You got to do your own research. Okay, now, He says, I stumbled across a very rare book whilst researching star forts titled Seacoast Fortifications of the United States by Emmanuel Raymond Lewis. This very first sentence caught my attention. It reads, when this book appeared in 1970, it was the first publicly available work in nearly a century on the subject of harbor defense fortifications and seacoast artillery in the United States. This was genuinely the first publication on star forts and was considered esoteric. Even military historians could not obtain a copy. The book goes on to state that until it was published, there only existed a small fragmentary literature that consisted mainly of pamphlets, and for each fort documented, dozens were ignored. The reason for this, they state, remained unknown, as most forts built in the country are modest and constructed quite rapidly. That's what they tell us. And stresses that the book does not propose to examine in any depth the origins, the conduct, or the wisdom that led to their construction. The illustrations and information within this book were gathered from private organizations and with the assistance of the Smithsonian Institute. How did we know they were behind something? Whose name alone always raises my suspicions. Yeah, anytime they're involved, there's some bullshit going on. I'm just going to say. They are, after all, America's equivalent of the Vatican vaults. And with regards to the Vatican, you actually need permission to visit their vault, as it is inaccessible to the public and protected by armed guards. Now, why would that be? Trying to tell y'all. And y'all still running in these places where these pedophiles pray over you. I'm just telling you. It's ridiculous, you know? It's just ridiculous. These secret apostolic archives are behind steel reinforced walls with climate control rooms and over 50 miles of shelves. I would just love to hang out there. I would lock myself in there and just bring me food and water. Fruits and vegetables and water. The text scripts relics go back 1,000 years, and one of the rather more mysterious relics is known as the chronovisor. This is definitely worth a few minutes of your time to look into it further. All right, we're going to highlight that. Okay, the chronovisor. Yeah, and we're going to also highlight that book, which I'm just going to see. He said it's very rare, so I know it's going to be thousands, if not hundreds, maybe 100K for that book. I don't know. It's going to be up there. I mean, I've bought some really nice books, but my library is not as extensive as Big Brother Chief Red Wolf and some of you other collectors out there, whoever sees this book, whoever sees this video. I'm just in the beginning stages. I'll just put it that way. A modest collection. All right. So it says, they conclude by stating that the star forts ceased due to the financial constraints. But I would argue that the United States of America never actually started this construction in the first place. In fact, I would strongly suggest they repurposed those magnificent cymatic structures from the Tartarian Empire and ethos. Now, in Florida, what is the name of that? Let me recall. Coral Castle. The gentleman who built the Coral Castle there. You ever go to Florida, you need to look that up and you need to go check it out. That was built by levitating those bricks with sound. Okay. Frequencies and the harmonics or cymatic frequencies. All right. That's how he built that. All right. You need to look up Coral Castle. All right. Let's move on. I'm going to keep this short because I've got about a few minutes and I'm going to wrap it up right here on this page. However, historians will tell you that there are quite simply castles or bastions designed in a specific way to deflect the impact of cannonballs. I'm sure you'll agree that this requires a huge stretch of the imagination when you compare them to a typical castle or fortress. Added to this, the fact that they align so precisely with the constellations of our galaxy can't surely be just a coincidence. I would also argue that to see their symmetry and to have constructed them so accurately would have surely required the ability to oversee construction from above, perhaps via an airship. Okay. Airships appear to play a huge role in transportation during the Tartarian reign. It is my belief that the old world buildings we see around the world were actually used to board them. Many of the towers within the cathedrals and palaces could also have been used for the very same purpose. Pinnacles have clearly been removed and replaced with crucifixes, crosses, and given the appearance once again of places of worship. In several of the books I have researched, I am constantly drawn to the words free worldwide travel, which would have almost certainly been achieved using airships. So how would this be possible without a vast number of incredibly tall structures strategically located throughout the world? And we know that the ziggurats or pyramids all around the world, especially the ones with the flat tops, were landing zones or landing centers for these airships. All right. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, this goes back to the time of when the pyramids were functioning and operational. And I want to propose that Tartaria also piggybacked off of the knowledge they had from a later point in time, which would have been when the pyramids were operational. Okay. Because you got to remember, there's been 6 resets. We're on the 7th one right now. So you got to understand that as each reset that was occurring was getting tighter and tighter with the controls and knowledge. And there were some that preserved the knowledge like we're trying to do today and rediscover it and bring it to people's attention and awareness. But again, everything is subjective, right? History has been rewritten. We know that. It's his story, not ours. And so I just encourage each one of you to pick up this book, okay? And, check it out and start researching on your own. I haven't gotten through chapter 4 because I need to cut this video. I don't want to make it too long. I'm going to have to chop it up and break up another section in chapter 4. Once I get through that part, I think like I said, I am going to pull up my laptop, share my screen and pull up some things and then do that Facebook Live over there. And then download it and upload it to a couple of other platforms that I have. So anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing night. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to cut it right there where we're talking about worldwide travel and the airships the Tartarians had at the time. And it was free worldwide travel. We didn't require passports. You could just go wherever. And obviously, since the world wars have happened, there have been tighter constraints on us traveling and having the knowledge and being able to learn and grow from each other and visit certain places. All right. I appreciate you guys for joining me. You guys have an amazing evening. And remember what I always say, be the change you want to see all around this Earth Dome, because it is up to you and I to make a positive change. I will talk to you guys soon.